Hey, it's David. The Bandit has broken down. Let's see if we can fix it. I've had an issue with starting for some time now. It's very intermittent. Occasionally, when you press the starter switch, just nothing happens. No response at all. But you leave it, you come back to it, hit it again, goes perfectly. So, not sure what's going on with that. Not sure if it's related to this problem. It may well be. We'll find out, hopefully. But I was on my way down to meet some friends last weekend. On the motorway, it started to misfire. That misfire got worse, and as it misfired, it backfired, which suggests to me that the fuel was still running, but the ignition was cutting off. So on the next cycle, it kicked the fuel into the exhaust, exploded it, and but then the bike restarted. So I turned around, headed home, but before I get home, it just died. Left me stranded on the side of the motorway, completely dead. Nothing electrical working, except for the neutral light and the oil pressure light came on the dashboard. Otherwise completely dead. No indicators, no lights, no absolutely nothing at all. So it got lifted back to here on a recovery truck, and now I'm digging in to see what I can find. Now, as you can see, I've partially stripped the bike off, so I've got access to the wiring, and I've had a bit of a look around at it, and I'll show you what I've found. Initially, I'm thinking there's two obvious options. One is there's an issue with the power. Maybe there's an issue with the earth. So the first thing is I checked the power. So I checked the power down to the starter relay. That works fine. The power runs straight from the starter relay into the starter relay. There's a separate feed runs out of the starter relay into the rest of the electrics. So that looked fine. So I checked the earth. I connected a jumper cable from the earth post here to here because I could see that there was some bare metal. And as I connected to here, it was sparking a bit. Now that did indicate to me that there was power flowing through the cable. As I did that, the lights came on the bike because I had the ignition switch on at this point. So it did indicate that was a potential solution. So I then tracked the earth cable down to the back of the engine. Couldn't really see anything, it all looked in okay, but it's really hard to get to that earth strap connection down there. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I need to putting a new earth strap in, which I may well do. But moving on, didn't actually find the source of the problem, I don't think. However, before I got much further, what I realised is that this bracket here is, of course, the mount for the fuel tank, and it's rubber mounted. That means it's isolated from the frame. That means the fuel tank was having current flowing through it. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure I'm particularly keen on the idea of a fuel tank running a 12-volt electric charge through it, particularly when I'm sitting on the bike. So that's made me thinking, okay, maybe the problem is that there's a bare wire under the tank, because under here there are a lot of connectors. It's where all the wiring happens really on this bike. It's mostly around here. All the connectors for the front end and so forth, they're all under here. And the base of the tank does sit on them, particularly since I've pulled the wiring back from the front end, because with this shorter front end on it now, without all the fairing and stuff half fairing that used to be on the standard on a Bandit S, you've got all this extra wiring, and there is quite a lot of extra wiring. So I'm thinking, okay, something's chafed through, there's a bare wire touching the fuel tank. So, fuel tank comes off, easy to do. You've got fuel sender here, drain pipe, you've got vacuum pipe, and you've got fuel pipe. That's it. It takes a couple of minutes to undo these two bolts here, whip the fuel tank off. Of course, the fuel tank is always going to be full. It's just the nature of life, which makes it a bit hard and heavy to get out. You have to remember to hook the fuel tap up from under here, so you have to lift it and you have to tilt it up to get that fuel tap out, and then you can take it away. So that left me here. Starting to warm up in here a little bit now, appreciating the heater, even though I've not got it on very high. I've got another heater down there as well, so it's a little bit nippy this morning, but warmer than yesterday. Anyway, back to the point. I spent some time working through the wiring, peeling back some tape, checking for loose wires, checking for any damage at all in any of these connectors, taking the connectors apart, cleaning them up, using some contact cleaner, blowing them out with the air gun, just working your way through all these connectors, trying to find anything that might be the source of the problem. I pulled the ignition switch connector out from under here, which is where it lurks, and took that apart, cleaned it, no difference. This one I pulled this one it's a bit stiff out. I've disconnected the separate connector block on here because this wiring sleeve here is a bit old, it's cracked and it's damaged where the forks, it comes through here, and as you turn the handlebars, this is the bit that gets trapped against here, and the forks legs can actually squash the cable and so forth. So this was this is where I thought the fault would be. It would be on this, but no, all the wires look perfectly okay, no problem at all. And I'm going to leave this one undone because I need to refeed it through the forks, and it goes down and up and so forth. So still not found the problem. So finally I've actually taken a step back and had to actually reach for some tools. So now I've got a multimeter out and I'm starting to check things to see what's going on and seeing what's live and what's not live. And in the course of actually checking this, I still got in mind that there was power coming through the fuel tank, and I can find nothing under here where the base of the fuel tank is obviously metal. It sits down here, it's pushing against this wiring, but I can find nothing down here that could be causing the problem, and the bike still isn't working. And then I started checking the various connectors to see what was live and what wasn't live, and trying to trace the source of the power flow through the system. I mean, this is a bit of a problem I have with this sort of electrics. It's very hard to diagnose a problem like this because it could be anywhere. Anyway, so I started checking the connectors. So I checked all the earth on this bike is black with a white tracer, and it's a common earth. It goes right throughout the bike. It earths from the battery to the engine. There's a couple of earths on the coil posts, and that's about it. It doesn't really earth anywhere else. There's no other proper earth straps, but it's enough because it all interconnects. So I connect the power, and it had power. And this is where I'm starting to struggle now, because things have power, so why does it not work? And then I checked the earth, and it has power. So I'm taking these connectors apart now, and I'm looking for the earth leads on these. So there's the black with white, so I'm checking these now. And these are also live. So it quickly becomes clear that almost all of the earth circuit is actually carrying current. By this point, I've pretty much eliminated the entire front of the bike. So now, work backwards. Work through all the switches down into here, looking for anything that could be disconnected, double checking the fuses. By this point I found I've now got a blown headlight fuse, so I've changed that. So now it brings me back to here, and this is the point at which I actually pulled this out of here so I could access the wiring. And there's a fair bit of wiring in here because you've got the connectors for the rear light and you've got the indicators, they all come into here. What I found was that this indicator here, the wire was touching the post. So what I mean by this is down in here, this wire, you can just see, if it will focus on there, there we go. This is the live wire and it's got just a little bit of cable shorting here because it's been touching this here, and you can see it's damaged all the way around. So it's touching this, which is earthing to this, and this is just the tiniest of little wires that hardly carries any current at all. And yet, as soon as I've moved this off here, all the electrics have come back on. So now I've got to get into here, I've got to sleeve this so it doesn't happen, and I need to find a way of stopping this battery moving around, because that's what's happening, is the battery is sliding around a little bit and obviously it's just bumping into there, and that's what's actually done it. I'm not suggesting that that is the only problem, because there's still an issue with the electrics on this bike. And I've also had this switch apart here, so I've put some contact cleaner down into here to see if that will help with the starter switch issue. But what happens when we turn the ignition on now? Lights come on. Okay, so everything seems to work. Well, the indicators probably aren't. Okay, I can't see the one on that side. Is that working? Yep, so that indicator's working. This one won't be working because I've got it disconnected. So, as I say, everything now seems to be working, and all down to one little wire. But the problem you have here is that could have been anywhere on the bike, and this is one of the reasons why I dislike electrics, and I suspect a lot of people do. It can be really hard to know where the problem is. It could have been a failed component anywhere in here, and I don't really have the skills to get in and find it. But with a little bit of patience, with a multimeter. Now I should say that I was a little more sophisticated for me in doing this, because I also used this one, which I was fortunate enough to win in a competition from Delboy's Garage, because otherwise I wouldn't have bought it, because it's electrical and you know, but it's really cool because it's an auto one, and I've used this to check ohms, which is connection. And I use this, I was really suspicious of the ignition key because ignition locks do wear out. It's an old bike, it's done 50,000 miles, it's 18 years old. It's had a lot of wear and tear on this key switch, and as I say, these do fail. So, but I was able to identify the power line on here, disconnect it, and then check that I had continuity on all the contacts when I turn the key to on. So if there's a fault in here, I shouldn't get continuity when I'm actually doing that. Now somebody who knows more about electrics is probably going to tell me that I'm wrong, and that's okay. Because, you know, as I say, I'm by no means an expert on electricity, but I think it's important that we shouldn't be afraid of it either, because a lot of faults with bikes are electrically related. There's a lot of help out there on the forums. There's a lot of people asked the same questions before, although I didn't go looking for this one. I just want to do some basic fault finding. But that's really the point of this video, more than anything else, is don't be afraid of your electrics, even if you know nothing about them like I do. But anyway, let's get on. Let's fix this. So that bit of wiring is now repaired. I've heat shrinked over where the damaged insulation was. I've actually put a bit of sleeving over the entire piece now, and heat shrunk that onto the end so it doesn't move. So it's now pretty much good to go, and as you may have seen, that now works fine. So it's all up good and ready to go. I'm not a big fan of these plastic covered connectors, but it's what it had on there, so that's what I'm using. And this whole back end may get rewired and whatever at some point, but that's what it is. What I need to do now is to tuck the wiring away, zip tie up to the sides so it doesn't move, make sure this new wiring doesn't foul the cover, the seat base when it goes back on, get this all buttoned up, get all the connectors back on, and then see if it still works.
If you let me walk away, maybe then we'd lose it all. No. Who am I to let you
Reconnected all the wiring, put the key back in, turned it, completely dead. Exactly the same problem I had before. Nothing works, starter wasn't working. So I've pulled the battery back out and now things are working again. Starter still wasn't working, but when I checked the voltage, the battery had run down, so it's still shorting out somewhere. I'm assuming it's somewhere here in the back box, because as soon as I take it out of there it works okay. I've had the battery on charge for a little bit now. That's up there says that it's still not fully charged, but I've just come out here to check whether or not maybe it'll start, or at least do something. Still dead. That says 13.3, 13.2, so that's 13 volts. It is charging, but nothing on the starter. So it looks like that problem hasn't gone away. But everything else seems to be working. So I'm going to leave this on to charge a little bit longer until it goes green up there, and then come back and revisit and see if I can figure out why it's not starting, because it is a bit of a mystery. Mind you, it would help if I actually turned the kill switch off, wouldn't it? Still not starting. That was a bit optimistic. Right, let's leave it to charge and then think about the starter. It could just be the switch. If so, I need to have a look at the wiring and see if I can bypass the switch and see if that cures the problem. Fingers crossed.